Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great day. Today we're diving into something that affects pretty much every car on the road, the oxygen sensor. More specifically, we're going to talk about what happens when this little component starts to fail. Let's start with the basics. The oxygen sensor has one main job. It measures how much oxygen is present in your exhaust system. Most cars come equipped with two oxygen sensors. One sits before the catalytic converter, and another one sits after it. Some vehicles have 3 or even 4 sensors, especially if they have dual catalytic converters. For today's discussion, we're focusing on the sensor that sits before the cat. Once this sensor heats up enough to start working properly, it feeds data to your car's computer, which is called the ECM. The ECM uses this information to make constant adjustments to your fuel injectors. The goal is simple: achieve the perfect balance between air and fuel. Here's how it works in practice. When the sensor detects a rich condition, that means there's too much fuel and not enough air in the mix. The ECM responds by cutting back on fuel. On the flip side, if the sensor picks up a lean condition, which means too much air and not enough fuel, the ECM tells the injectors to add more fuel. This constant back and forth keeps your engine running smoothly. Most oxygen sensors last around 100,000 miles before they need replacing. Now let's get into the symptoms you'll notice when your oxygen sensor starts going bad. The first and most obvious sign is your check engine light turning on. Several diagnostic codes relate directly to oxygen sensor problems, and your car's computer will typically catch these issues. However, here's something important to know. Your oxygen sensor can actually be failing without triggering the check engine light at all. So don't assume everything is fine just because that light isn't glowing on your dashboard. The second symptom you might notice is a drop in your engine's performance. Your car runs best when it achieves a perfect burn of the air and fuel mixture. When you have a faulty oxygen sensor, it can send incorrect readings to the ECM. The sensor might report a false rich or lean condition, and your car's computer will try to fix a problem that doesn't actually exist. This leads to improper fuel adjustments that throw off the whole air-fuel ratio. The result is an engine that feels sluggish and less responsive than it should be. This brings us to the third symptom, a rough idle. Since the ECM is receiving bad data from the sensor, it can't properly control the air-fuel ratio and combustion process. Poor combustion efficiency is the direct result of this confusion. You'll feel this as shaking or vibration when your car is sitting still, whether you're parked in your driveway or waiting at a red light. The fourth symptom hits you right in the wallet: poor gas mileage. The oxygen sensor plays a huge role in how the ECM manages fuel injection. When this sensor sends a false lean signal, the computer thinks there's too much air and not enough fuel. The ECM responds by adding extra fuel that your engine doesn't actually need. All that unnecessary fuel means more frequent trips to the gas station and a noticeably lighter wallet. That extra fuel creates another problem, which leads us to the fifth symptom: failed emissions tests. When your engine receives more fuel than it needs, that excess has to go somewhere. It passes through the catalytic converter and eventually exits through your tailpipe. While catalytic converters are designed to reduce harmful emissions, they weren't built to handle excessive amounts of unburned fuel. This overload is why your car fails its emissions test. Here's a practical tip for diagnosing a bad oxygen sensor. Try unplugging the sensor's connector. This forces your car into what's called open loop mode. In this mode, the ECM stops relying on the oxygen sensor and instead uses data from other sensors to calculate the air-fuel ratio. These include the mass airflow sensor, engine coolant temperature sensor, throttle position sensor, manifold absolute pressure sensor, and others. If your car runs noticeably better with the oxygen sensor unplugged, that's a clear sign you need a replacement. When you're ready to replace your oxygen sensor, consider getting a specialized socket designed for this job. It makes the whole process much easier and prevents damage to the sensor during removal. That wraps up our look at oxygen sensor symptoms. Hopefully, this information helps you identify and fix any issues with your own vehicle. If you found this useful, I'd appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.